What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of fights. This time it's the pay-per-view week. UFC 278, Kamaru Usman defends at 170 his belt against Leon Edwards in a rematch. 13 fights currently on the slate. I had a wonderful, very sexual handlebar mustache over the weekend for UFC San Diego. Gave me good luck. We got crafty with the props on that card. Came up 8.5 units. We're going to have to get crafty with props for this card too, you guys. It's a lot of wide money lines on fighters I don't think deserve it. So we'll see what we can do. Get some good money lines, get some good props going that are still dropping right now early in the week. So my girlfriend made me shave off the very sexual, iconic Lucky mustache, but she gave me that nice flag in the background. So I guess that makes an even trade. But without further ado, hit that like, hit that subscribe, blasting past 300 subscribers. And yeah, let's break into this 13-fight card and make some money. First fight of the prelims is a flyweight bout with a pretty good potential to be entertaining between Victor Altamirano and Daniel da Silva. Altamirano, the minus 200 favorite here, only having one UFC fight so far. Daniel da Silva, the Brazilian southpaw, is a plus 170 underdog, only having two fights in the UFC, losing them both. So both guys looking to get their first UFC win. Altamirano is a 10-2 former LFA flyweight champion. He is the larger man at 5'8", 70-inch reach here. Coming off of a split decision, very close fight on the Dana White Contender Series, one that I think he was lucky to get. He gets the contract to the UFC. First fight in February against Carlos Hernandez, also making his debut that night. And, he lost a very close split decision. So they got it back from him. He looked very flat and very slow to engage in round one. In that fight, did Altamirano. It looked very uncharacteristic of him, in my opinion. Altamirano does have very good pace and pressure, usually in all three rounds of the fight, and he showed that in that fight in rounds 2 and 3. Daniel da Silva, the complete opposite. Kill or be killed fighter, round one or bust. Gets all of his work done early, does da Silva. He is a couple inches shorter, equal reach, and 5 years younger. 11-3 prospect. But yeah, 0-2 in the UFC so far. He comes out there against Jeff Molina. A pretty successful first round of trying to get submission offense going, backpacking Jeff Molina, and couldn't quite get the submission, and then fell apart cardio-wise in round 2, got dropped. His kick got countered by a right cross of Jeff Molina, and then he was too gassed to get up from the flurry of ground and pound strikes. Was da Silva, so he lost by round 2 TKO. Lost by round 1 against Francisco Figuiredo, who is also on this card. Francisco Figuiredo actually had a very slick transition into a knee bar, which cost Daniel da Silva. It shocked me. I didn't think that would happen from Francisco Figuiredo, but da Silva got caught lacking on the ground, and that was the story of his second UFC fight. So we're looking for a bounce-back spot. I do think that Daniel da Silva should be the minus 200 favorite if this were a one-round fight. I think da Silva's got better striking and better grappling offensively early in this fight. But with that potential to fall off in rounds 2, and if he can make it to round 3, he'll certainly be gassed out at that point. I have to pick Altamirano to get the victory here. He does have good pace and pressure. Through a 3-round fight, and he does have 5-round experience. As I mentioned, he was the champion by decision over there in the LFA. So I could see him throwing in a combination of wrestling and good striking in rounds 2 and 3, possibly even getting da Silva out of there inside the distance, but I'm not sure if that will happen. He doesn't have the best finishing potential. Does Altamirano? I think he will at least win a decision victory here, winning rounds 2 and rounds 3 for sure, if he can survive the early storm in round 1. So I'm not going to pick a underdog like this that's this green, 0-2 in the UFC, and, bank on him getting a finish in round 1. Just not my style. I'll take Altamirano. Probably a pass for me betting-wise. If anything, I would bet, one of these two guys to win inside the distance or the unders in this fight, just due to the potential that da Silva gasses out and Altamirano takes over. So give me Altamirano. We'll call it by decision in this first bout of the night at flyweight. Up next at bantamweight, we have Aoriqileng taking on Perrin. This will be Aoriqileng's second fight at bantamweight, his fourth fight in the UFC overall. 5'7", 69-inch reach, 29 years old. The exact same measurables for Perrin, who has a 10-5 record, and this is Perrin's second time in the UFC. He had a unsuccessful Dana White Contender Series performance a few years back. Now he is making his second walk to the cage after taking on Mario Batista. I believe that was a short notice loss that he took. Showed toughness, was able to go all 3 rounds with the dangerous Mario Batista. But still, Jay Perrin is the plus 140 underdog here. Aoriqileng, the minus 165 favorite. Yeah, Jay Perrin, not the best, I gotta say. He's got decent boxing, a pretty good forward pressure and aggression. He's at least, willing to open up even when he's not winning the fight. He'll still keep moving forward and pressuring, throwing at least some output. He's got decent scramble ability off of the ground, but overall, he's only able to out-transition and get reversals on very low-level guys that I've seen. So he does set up his takedowns well, but I think he's going to have trouble in that realm against Aoriqileng. Aoriqileng, he has very good striking output. He debuted against Jeff Molina not too long ago, and they had an absolute 3-round war where Aoriqileng, down at flyweight to that point, put up, triple-digit significant striking numbers against Jeff Molina. Eventually gave up the fight, just showing some pretty poor striking defense, and his cardio did start to wane in that fight. But again, it was an absolute war. Both guys swinging like crazy. So far, Aoriqileng is very successful with his takedowns. 3 of 4 landed on Jeff Molina. He landed the one that he needed on Cameron Else before getting a round 1 TKO. But yeah, he shows very good diversity of strikes. I think Aoriqileng is going to be the better man here in pretty much every aspect of mixed martial arts. Jay Perrin, I've seen get really stuck on the cage. He gets pressured by a lot of guys there on the regional scene, but also, like we saw in his debut against Mario Batista. So, he does, throw pretty good strikes back, even when his back is on the cage. He'll try to stay active, at least throwing strikes to the body, knees to the legs, things like that, but he can't circle off the cage that well, and Aoriqileng looks very, very good now up at bantamweight. He looks like a strong kid, and, throws very good combinations. His boxing is going to be great in this bout. The much, much better striker at distance, and I do think he's the better wrestler, is Aoriqileng, so I'm just not seeing that much improvement from Jay Perrin, honestly. Some of the fights I saw in Cage Titans and some of these regional promotions, he makes the same mistakes in the UFC and on his Dana White Contender Series, appearance. And anytime he steps up in a big stage, like his Bellator appearances, Dana White Contender Series, now the UFC, all of those are losses. But then he goes back against these lower level guys on the regional scene and still makes some of those fights seem pretty close, more close than they should be if you're going to be in the UFC time and time again. Now his second walk to the cage. I just think the better experience, better striking, grappling, and probably better cardio goes to Aoriqileng. So I think he could be a bigger favorite here, and I'm taking him to win this fight. It's hard for me to bank on Aoriqileng getting this done inside the distance at this weight class when Jay Perrin was able to show pretty good toughness so far, but I'll at least call Aoriqileng to win this by decision. Up next at flyweight, we have the return of Amir Albazi taking on Francisco Figuiredo. Francisco, the younger brother of Davison Figuiredo, the 125 champion. A bit of a skill difference between the two brothers, but Amir Albazi is returning for the first time since January of 2021. And, he had a couple of scheduled bouts since then. I think he pulled out of one versus Ode Osborne. In turn, I believe Tim Elliott was scheduled to face Albazi, but he pulled out. So not all entirely his fault. The 14-1 prospect here at flyweight, 4 knockouts, 8 submissions. Amir Albazi looks very good, and both of the guys he was scheduled to face last year, much bigger test than that from Francisco Figueiredo, in my opinion. Francisco, coming off of the Brazilian regional circuit, which is Jungle Fight, very popular promotion there that a lot of guys come out of. Very skilled on the feet, good evasive movement, and very snappy combinations from Francisco Figueiredo. Decent takedown defense and a very crafty submission game. I mentioned earlier versus Daniel da Silva, Francisco Figueiredo's last fight, he was able to get a knee bar. He really faked an arm bar from guard to get Daniel da Silva to move, and he was able to scissor and isolate that leg and get the knee bar very, very quickly. Slick submission game from Francisco. He deserved every bit of that one. It was not a lucky submission. He definitely plans those out well and has been doing this a long time. And, he's got good scramble ability on the ground as well. When he does get taken down, just the cardio really starts to fade later in rounds 2 and rounds 3. His, elusive hands-down movement starts to get a little bit slower. He's more hittable. And I believe Amir Albazi has him pretty much everywhere in this fight. Again, unless it was some flash, knockout or some sort of really crafty submission that he can lock up. That potential is definitely in play, but Amir Albazi, big skill difference here, and he is a minus 400 favorite over Francisco Figueiredo. pretty wide money line. Sort of agree with it, but it's been a year and a half since we've seen Amir Albazi, and he's still, got a lot to prove. So, he did have pretty good, nice boxing and good hand speed against Zalga Salmagulov. Before that, he had a slick submission of his own over Malcolm Gordon, who beat Francisco Figuiredo by a very dicey decision, again, capitalizing on poor fight IQ and poor cardio from Figuiredo in that bout. So, huge striking inferiority from Francisco Figuiredo here. I think that'll ultimately lead to the demise of Figuiredo in this bout. I'm going to pick Albazi to win this. Even when Albazi is taken down, he's got very good butterfly guard, and he can really get back to his feet pretty well. So he's got very good groundwork as well, very good boxing, powerful in his hands as well, good durability, and more importantly, good cardio over 3 rounds. So 8 submissions of his own, 4 knockouts from Albazi. Francisco Figuiredo, a similar record, but just over not as great competition in my opinion. So give me Amir Albazi. Not sure how to play this from a gambling perspective. Not interested in laying minus 400 on the returning flyweight here, but I do think he wins at a pretty high percentage. Up next at welterweight, a battle of 2 guys looking to make their second walk to the cage and get their first UFC victory. AJ Fletcher taking on Loosa. A lot of similarities between these 2 guys. Both very muscular for 170, both 5'10", both pretty young guys. 28 for Loosa, 25 for AJ Fletcher. But AJ Fletcher will have a 7-inch reach disadvantage. 67-inch reach, kind of a short one there. Loosa, the long 74-inch reach at this weight class at 170. He is 8-3, and Loosa is a plus 130 underdog. AJ Fletcher 9-1, minus 150 favorite. Kind of makes sense. 9-1 record. 8 of those 9 for AJ Fletcher finished inside the distance. Very potent finisher at all rounds of the fight. Out of those 8 inside the distance victories, 4 were submissions, 4 were knockouts. So, he also got that awesome flying knee in round 1 on the Dana White Contender Series against, I believe it was an undefeated opponent at the time. He's got good cardio, good finishing potential, as I mentioned, and he's really fast to close the distance, even though he's lacking that 7 inches of reach there. Loosa, on the other hand, not a big potent finisher. His last 5 fights have all gone to decision. He has gone 2-3 in those decision results, including that loss to Jack Della Maddalena on the Contender Series, and a loss by decision most recently to Munir Lazez. So Loosa is one of these guys where he looks like he's got all of the physical advantages, all of the potential. He's training at Killcliff FC, formerly Sanford MMA, a good team around him, and he looks to have the power and the physicality to really do some damage, but just can't really stop being low volume on the striking. He does have a nice long extension on his jab, some good combinations when he's urged to do so by his corner, but he just can't put all of it together. He's very hesitant to throw, low output counter striker, and if he does get hit clean, he's very, even then, more hesitant to open up and throw as the fight goes on. So a decent takedown defense so far, hasn't been tested a whole heck of a lot. It will be tested against AJ Fletcher, who's a very strong, powerful wrestler with flashy striking to add to it. So good top control, good ground and pound and activity, as he showed against Matt Semmelsberger in his first UFC his first UFC appearance, and a loss there by decision. So a very close fight. He was en route to winning. He landed 4 out of 6 takedowns, got 5 minutes of total control time over Matt Semmelsberger, did AJ Fletcher, but he was, kind of fading as Matt Semmelsberger was taking over. Semmelsberger showed some very good veteran savvy as far as reversing positions, landing a takedown of his own at one point, and, just getting the better moments to win 2 out of 3 rounds in that fight. So, but again, very fluid striking, very powerful striking, and a good ability to use his flashy striking and explosivity to close range, even though he's going to be at a massive reach disadvantage here for AJ Fletcher. So I think he's going to have the better moments on the feet, and I think he's going to have the ability to really use his power wrestling to get this to the ground, and just get control time there. He's got very good top control, very good ability to transition to side control mount, look for those, head and arm chokes, arm triangle chokes. He's got a good rear naked choke if he can get the back. And I just think once this gets in close range, AJ Fletcher should win this all day. So minus 150, I think a generous price tag on a guy who I think has got more well-rounded skills overall. So I think Loosa, just based on his appearance, his potential, and the team he trains with, is going to be a very popular underdog on a card where there's not a lot of close money lines, but I think AJ Fletcher is just a better and more well-rounded guy here. I think he's got, at 25 years old, the ability to improve as well fight to fight. So look for a better version of AJ Fletcher this time around. The statistics would show that he'd probably win this inside the distance based on his winning record, but Loosa yet to be finished yet. So maybe it'll be a better version of his fight against Matt Semmelsberger, and this time he gets his hand raised in a 3-round decision. Give me AJ Fletcher here. Moving on to flyweight, which is the first of 2 women's fights on this card. Miranda Maverick taking on Shayna Young. And wow, what a wide money line this is. -500 on Miranda Maverick, plus 370 underdog price on Shayna Young. Shayna Young is 8-4 as a pro. The bigger woman at 5'7", 65-inch reach, and 31 years old. Miranda Maverick 10-4 as a professional, 5'3", about the same reach, 65-inch reach, but she is 25 years young. These two actually have fought before back in Invicta, and Miranda Maverick won the first time by submission. Will she do it again? We will see. Shayna Young is 1-2 in the UFC. She actually does have okay stand-up and decent power in her strikes at times. The first time that she fought Miranda Maverick, she actually countered her with some stiff jabs before eventually getting taken down and, eventually tapped out in round 1. Miranda Maverick just won from rear naked choke in round 2 over Sabina Mazo, a win that she desperately needed because she had come off of back-to-back decision losses. One to Macy Barber, which I thought that Miranda Maverick actually won. Then she came back against Erin Blanchfield and lost a clear-cut decision there, getting out-wrestled by Erin Blanchfield the whole time. So we're kind of seeing with the ceiling for Miranda Maverick where she's at 25 years old, what she has to improve on. She does train at Elevation Fight Team, which I do like for her wrestling style. 5 UFC fights, as I mentioned. She has 6 submissions as a pro, and she's 3-2 in the UFC. So coming off of that Sabina Mazo fight, I think this fight will be very similar to that one against Shayna Young. Shayna Young actually does have very powerful striking at times, as I mentioned. Uses her height and reach well offensively, but defensively she's pretty hittable. But so is Miranda Maverick at times, to be fair. Miranda Maverick, however, is always moving forward, always fighting for your dollar, just with her good pace and pressure, even when she's getting hit at times, which I think she will get hit by Shayna Young a couple of times. But you can count on her to go in for the single leg, eventually transition to a body lock, push her opponents against the cage, and look for the takedown. So I think she'll get that against Shayna Young, who does not have great takedown defense. And she's been outstruck and outcontrolled by Macy Chiasson, Stephanie Eggers TKO'd her. Choked out by Sarah Alpar. You never want to see that from Shayna Young. So just due to her susceptibility to getting taken down and controlled, I think that's why Miranda Maverick is a -500 favorite here. But again, -500 favorite means that she's going to win this fight, 83% of the time, I want to say the implied probability is. So you'd be paying -500 just to see her win 83 times out of 100 times they fought. A pretty scary proposition. I know she's going to be a very popular parlay piece. I think she does win, but man, there's not a whole lot of extra value on Miranda Maverick. I think playing her inside the distance actually wouldn't be a bad look here. Maybe playing her by submission as well. Shayna Young, I think she will find success early with the striking, land a couple of times on Miranda Maverick, but eventually get taken down and submitted. I'll call it another round 2 submission for Miranda Maverick here. Probably wears down Shayna Young in round 1. If she doesn't get her out of there in round 1, I think the submission will present itself in round 2. So give me Miranda Maverick. Very confident here. Up next at featherweight, we have Sean Woodson taking on Luis Saldaña. 2 guys that are very big frames for the weight class, but Sean Woodson, by far and away the bigger man here, 6'2", a 79-inch reach, which is insane. He is 30 years old. Luis Saldaña, 31 years old, 73-inch reach, and 5'11". So both guys are massive. Sean Woodson, the bigger of the 2. He is the -335 favorite. Luis Saldaña is the +255 underdog. So Sean Woodson, 3-1 in the UFC so far, only losing to Julian Erosa. He also had his entry to the UFC off of a round 2 knockout over Terrence McKinney. Sean Woodson, 9-1 overall as a pro. Both guys have a boxing background, and Luis Saldaña only 2-1 in the UFC so far. So Saldaña coming off of welcoming the newcomer Bruno Souza to the UFC, and he beat him in a 3-round fight. But Luis Saldaña, the biggest gripe in this guy is he'll start good, and then he kind of falls apart in rounds 2 or rounds 3. He looked a little bit more improved against Bruno Souza because he only fell apart in round 2, and then he came back in round 3, showed some sort of improved cardio there, because his cardio looked atrocious in the Dana White Contender Series fight, and then also his fight against, what happened? When he fought Austin Lingo, that one, it was just atrocious cardio. He got dropped in round 3, knocked down, and lost the decision when he was dominating round 1. So you can't have that strategy against Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson is 5-0 in decisions. Even though he's a very kind of slow, lumbering, large featherweight, he does pick his shots well. He can switch stances, use that long reach, even more so with his big stinging kicks. He has a lot of good front kicks he throws and high kicks. Picks his shots well, corners you against the cage, and Luis Saldaña does pretty well counter-striking off of his back foot, and I think he will be on his back foot in this fight. But again, most of his effective fight-ending power for Saldaña is when he's moving forward, and this will be the first time in the UFC Saldaña's had a reach disadvantage. So again, this is a type of thing where I think Saldaña, if they were both the same size here, and this is a 1-round fight, then maybe Saldaña would have a chance. But it being a 3-round fight, Sean Woodson has better durability, better cardio, a better minute-winning style with his 5-0 in decisions. Saldaña, going 2-4 in decisions. So before the UFC, I think Saldaña had like 100% finish rate as well. So we've already seen Sean Woodson face the test that is Terrence McKinney, the ultimate of fast starters. He was able to withstand his powerful striking in round 1. Sean Woodson was able to defend against all of the back takes and, offensive submission from Terrence McKinney. And then he flying kneed him and knocked him out cold in round 2. So Sean Woodson can weather the early storm from his opponents. Saldaña is not going to present any new threat there. And, I just think, pretty much everywhere this fight goes, the cardio for Sean Woodson, the size, the striking at range, obviously for Sean Woodson here. What you could give is maybe, Saldaña is not really like that good of a takedown artist, and Sean Woodson so far has very, very good takedown defense. Only the really crafty wrestler in Terrence McKinney was able to make it look easy on him. So even that path to victory is out of it for Saldaña. So not seeing a whole lot of paths to victory here. That does make sense why he's a minus 335 favorite for Sean Woodson. You'd have to rely on the fight-ending ability of Luis Saldaña here. He does have probably the better fight-ending power, but how is he going to get in range to land those strikes? I see Sean Woodson keeping him at bay with the long limbs, the kicks, and just the better straight punches in boxing from Sean Woodson. So I'm not sure if he gets Luis Saldaña out of there. If he does, it would be later in the fight when Saldaña is known to slow down. So the late round 3 finish is on the table for Sean Woodson, but I'll call it a decision victory for Sean Woodson here. Not sure how to play this fight. Again, minus 335 on the money line for Sean Woodson. A little bit crazy and just not a lot of extra value on that number, but give me Sean Woodson. Pretty confident he comes through. Up next at bantamweight is the second and final women's bout of the night. The return of Lucia Pudilova. Her second stint in the UFC starts on Saturday against Yanan Wu, who is the perfect opponent if you want to get started on a win streak here. Yanan Wu is the plus 125 underdog here, 1-4 in the UFC. Her only win was to Lauren Mueller, who is no longer with the promotion. Yanan Wu is 26 years old, pretty large frame at 5'8", a 66-inch reach. Lucia Pudilova, now 28 years old, also 5'8", 67.5-inch reach, and she is the minus 150 favorite here, which is crazy for a woman who was 2-5 in the promotion, cut from the organization, and now making her return. She is a moderate favorite here. 13-7 record, 9-6 decision record, and she did 6 decision results in her last 6 fights, 5-1 in those results. Looks to be maybe a bit improved on the feet from what I saw in the Octagon promotion back in the Czech Republic, her home country. And now fighting at bantamweight. She was a flyweight before, was Lucia Pudilova. So, again, 28 years old now. She's a few years removed from the last time we saw her. Hasn't been fighting great competition, of course, so you got to take with a grain of salt some of the improvements I thought I saw. But it looks like she's got a little bit more refined striking technique, a lot more striking output. Again, this is against lesser competition. She still is shown to get taken down, even with these Octagon promotion fighters. I still saw her get taken down. I still saw her get controlled and out-transitioned, so we'll see what happens. But Yanan Wu is not going to be the type of opponent that's going to out-wrestle you. Pretty poor offense and defense from the grappling of Yanan Wu. Pretty bad, striking defense, and her cardio is pretty horrible as well. Yanan Wu, 1-4 in decisions. Her only decision win was like 8 years ago, so usually getting a lot of finishes against lower level competition pre-UFC, and now in the UFC she's out-controlled, outstruck, and there's just not a whole lot to like about her. So I don't know, this is a really good setup bout for Pudilova to come back against. It almost makes you want to bet on Pudilova, just how awful Yanan Wu is, but that will be a hard proposition to put money on Loosa, who, again, was 2-5 before coming back to the UFC, and now this will be her debut for the second time. So she still looks susceptible to getting taken down. As I mentioned, Yanan Wu really not the opponent to do that. Lucia Pudilova is definitely still, her best win was over Sarah Moraes. Back in the day, she was able to knock down Sarah Moraes a couple times in that fight, but still almost got armbarred from guard. And the only victory in the UFC from Yanan Wu was a armbar from guard. So I think Pudilova in most worlds does get the striking going here, tees off on Yanan Wu for all 3 rounds, and gets her hand raised pretty easily. Nothing too impressive, I would say, but, this is just kind of a setup fight, I think, for her to look good in her return. If she loses this fight, they might as well just send her back overseas. But I think Lucia Pudilova should be a -150 favorite here. I agree with the line, and I think she gets the job done. And when I watch the Yanan Wu tape, it's something where I really want to bet against her here, but that would be a really hard proposition to bet on this second-time debutante. But give me Pudilova to make her successful return. Up next at lightweight, a very fun fight potentially between Jared Gordon and Leonardo Santos. The tail of the tape on this matchup is hilarious because Santos has some very good size advantages, but he is the 9 years senior here. He's 42 years old, 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach. Jared Gordon, 33, 5'9", 68-inch reach. So giving up 7 inches in reach, but he's got that 9-year youth advantage. And as such, he's a -330 favorite here. Plus 260 underdog price for Leonardo Santos, who was the Ultimate Fighter Brazil Season 2 winner after filling in short notice for Santiago Ponzinibbio that time. He actually fought Thiago Santos in the Ultimate Fighter house at welterweight in that too. So that goes to show you how far back Santos goes. And he's a very good fighter. I mean, honestly, the guy known as a BJJ world champion, but his striking is just as potentially dangerous, Best win is probably over Kevin Lee years ago. Round 1 knockout over him. He also knocked out Stevie Ray in a highlight reel finish. And then most recently almost finished Clay Guida, starting with a body shot that set up a huge flurry of strikes against the cage. Clay Guida showed his durability, survived, and was able to have a Fluffy Hernandez tier submission over the BJJ champion Santos in round 2. So a lot to like about Leonardo Santos early. And early on, if this is a 1-round fight, you could probably flip this line and give the -330 favorite tag to Santos. But Jared Gordon, he's got very basic fundamental skills in MMA, but he does have a consistent pace throughout 3 rounds. So that's why he's the biggest, or as big of a favorite as he is here. 10-0 in decisions as well, aids in that price tag. He has been knocked out 4 times, though. Not the best durability for Jared Gordon. And 2 of those times he's been knocked out in the UFC have been in round 1. By Diego de Fajeda and by Charles Oliveira. So Santos, I could see actually finishing that same method, right? In round 1, he could get the strikes, he could get the club and sub, he could just take him down and get the back. Jared Gordon is horrible about giving up his back to stand up. Over even Grant Dawson, he did it 3 times. He did it in round 1, 2, and 3. Finally, in round 3, that was the last straw, and Grant Dawson was able to lock up the submission. So Jared Gordon, not the most potential finisher in the UFC anyways. I'm not even sure if over a gassed Santos, he has the potential to get him out of there. He'd really have to be a gassed out version of Leonardo Santos. Maybe in round 3 that would be the look, but I struggle to even see Jared Gordon winning 2 out of these 3 rounds. I think Santos has enough gas if he doesn't unload it early like he did over Clay Guida, probably to beat Jared Gordon in round 1 and probably the majority of round 2 before finally falling apart in round 3. Kind of like he did against Grant Dawson himself, did Santos, finished in the last second of their fight. But yeah, I could see Santos getting this round 1 knockout. I could see him getting the back and getting a round 1 club and sub potentially. He's got the size, the experience, the grappling, the striking potential early. I mean, honestly, there's a lot to like about Santos here. It's just looking at the 42-year-old statistic, not very good. But at plus 260 is what I got the money line peaked at. I put a half of a unit on him to win. Maybe I'll look at the props and look at the round 1 potential for Santos. If that's juicy, maybe I'll take that as well. You could live bet Gordon after round 1, but I don't want to get too caught up in this fight in general from a strategic standpoint that way. I don't have that big of a faith in Gordon to take over in this fight, and I am going to take the underdog shot on Leonardo Santos here. I just think the size and the power early is too much, and Jared Gordon just has not impressed me. So a massively mispriced money line here, especially early on. Give me Santos for the upset. I think he does get this done by round 1 knockout. Okay, there are a few fights better to kick off a pay-per-view card than this one. Tyson Pedro taking on Harry Hunsucker at 205 pounds. So yeah, we're going to see a very trim, ripped version of Harry Hunsucker if he doesn't miss weight. Last time he weighed in, Harry Hunsucker was 238.5 pounds against Justin Tafa. So he's got some weight cutting to do. Harry Hunsucker is 33 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach, 0-2 in the UFC, 7-5 overall. Tyson Pedro broke his 3-year-long layoff last time against Ike Villanueva in a first-round stoppage. 8-3 professionally for Tyson Pedro. He's 30 years old still, 6'3", 79-inch reach. So does have an inch in height, several inches of reach, a couple years of youth, and a much better record. 7 UFC fights. He's got the experience as well. All of these things considered, he is a minus 800 favorite. Harry Hunsucker plus 500 underdog. So Harry Hunsucker, the king of the round 1 finish. He's lost by round 1 knockout in all of his UFC bouts and one Dana White Contender Series bout against Jared Vanderaa. He's also won in round 1 throughout his entire career outside of these bouts, right? So he's got 4 round 1 submissions. He's got 3 round 1 knockouts. He has lost to Dontel Mays at one point in time, and he lost his debut at pro. Both of those were also round 1. So he's got, if I can list some good things about Harry Hunsucker, he does have a very fast ability to blitz in range and kind of surprise you with, like a powerful left hook, some good overhands that are powerful, a nice right cross, some decently heavy leg kicks. He does have the ability to sprint, but that's what you're going to get. You're going to get like a little bit of sprinting, a little bit of a flurry here and there. It's very easily timed, predictable. Tyson Pedro does keep his head up and his chin pretty high, though, but just with the big reach advantage he'll have here, I believe that he will stay out of harm's way, because you only have to stay out of harm's way from Harry Hunsucker for about 3 minutes, and then the guy gasses himself out. So Tyson Pedro showed that he's got very good leg kicks against a lot of guys so far, but mostly Ike Villanueva, who he pretty much crippled him and ended up stopping him that way with ground and pound after he fell from the leg kicks, did Ike Villanueva earlier this year. Harry Hunsucker very susceptible to those as well, so I think those will come into play, help set up the Pedro victory here, and help him stay out of harm's way from Harry Hunsucker. I could see Hunsucker blitzing in for one of his wild haymaker combinations, and then Tyson Pedro just gets out of range and kicks his legs. So that's going to be key here. Tyson Pedro, a very good striker, but mostly a submission guy. He looks for the body lock, looks for the trip takedowns. He's got a lot of good takedown entries. 5 submissions, 3 knockouts as well. He even made his short notice debut against Khalil Roundtree, where he got a submission victory. So that was a very impressive way to burst onto the scene in the UFC. He had a couple of bouts where his momentum was slowed there. The most recent one was against Mauricio Shogun Rua in the end of 2018, before all of the knee surgeries of Tyson Pedro and his long layoff. So he got back in the groove of things. Against Ike, he looked a little bit hesitant to open up. Looked like there was some ring rust, but he did say in the post-fight that he had been working on trying to mature and not rush the round 1 finish, because Tyson Pedro is kind of a round 1 guy as well. He likes to sprint early and get his work done, but he looked very slow against Ike, slow and measured. So he hit Ike with like a million low blows and then eventually crippled his legs. So it was just a complete beatdown. Strong in the clinch, good knees. Again, going to have a great frame to have that good Muay Thai double collar tie-up. He could use that against Harry Hunsucker, and I think he does get the knockout over Harry Hunsucker here. It's a little bit dicey to pick, Pedro by knockout and try to chop down this price tag, because he could just as easily go for the submission, which he likes to do even more. But I could see Harry Hunsucker breaking before the sub part of the club and sub actually takes place. I think, by the time he's softened up by, blows from the full guard or the mount or up against the cage, I think Harry Hunsucker folds at some point after the 3-minute mark in round 1. And loses this fight. So round 1 knockout for Tyson Pedro is my confident look for this fight. Probably bet either Pedro in round 1 or the under 1.5s. I don't even know. Some of that stuff is going to be, a pretty high price tag as well, since he is a minus 800 on the money line. But go ahead, parlays away on Tyson Pedro. I think he does get this done. Up next is a fun heavyweight scrap between Marcin Tybura and Alexander Romanov. Marcin Tybura, the much more experienced UFC veteran here of 15 fights. Romanov coming off of a impressive beatdown as the biggest moneyline favorite of all time, minus 2,500 favorite over Chase Sherman. And he made it look pretty much that easy with a, shoulder lock in round 1 over Chase Sherman. You'd expect at 16-0 for Romanov, the big Moldovan, that he would be a big moneyline favorite here as well, and he is. He's a minus 350 favorite, only 5 UFC fights, but he's finished 4 of them, all in rounds 1 or rounds 2. His biggest test so far was against Juan Espino, where due to almost a disqualification in round 3, he was able to get a split technical decision in a fight he barely won in rounds 1 and rounds 2. So this is a big step up in competition from Chase Sherman against Marcin Tybura. Alexander Romanov, 31 years old, 6'2", 75-inch reach. And now he last weighed in at 236.5 pounds. A very shredded down, trim, athletic-looking version of big Moldovan Romanov here, whereas he was weighing in closer to like the 260-pound mark, 250 in a couple bouts. Marcin Tybura, that's what he weighs in at, about 250. But again, if you shred the fat off of both of these guys, Romanov's still probably a heavyweight. Marcin Tybura probably down to light heavyweight, middleweight. So 6'3", 78-inch reach, 36 years old at this point for Tybura. 22-7 record. He does have a 7-3 decision record and 4 knockouts in the UFC. So there's a lot to like about Tybura, who's gone 9-6 in the UFC so far. But the thing is, and I think he'll be a very popular underdog play here at plus 275 odds. I think that he does have a good shot at winning this, maybe more than that money line would indicate. But I just can't see it happening because there's a conflict in game plans here. Marcin Tybura usually is the one going for the same game plan that Romanov usually goes for. Usually Tybura is the one going for takedowns, weathering the early storm, getting top control time, ground and pound, maybe looking for submissions, maybe looking for the knockout by TKO on top position. Usually during the striking exchanges is where Tybura is going to struggle, right? Especially early on. So Romanov is going to have the clear wrestling advantage, the clear strength advantage. I think this will look a lot like the Tybura-Verdum fight, where Verdum was able to just pretty much have his way with Tybura in the clinch, out-muscle him in the clinch, out-strike him in the clinch, take him to the ground in a lot of exchanges there, and employ that top pressure and top position ground and pound. So I think Romanov does have that. I think he can outstrike Tybura on the feet as well, and then easily change levels and get the takedowns. Tybura does switch stances at times, and he's a little bit slow to do so. So in those transition periods where his feet are together and he's off balance, I think Romanov can time those. Tybura is very slow to sprawl. His takedown defense has holes in it. I think Romanov will use those types of holes in the game of Tybura to take him down at will and just get the big Tybura off balance. So I just think that, getting that conflicting game plan here, I don't see a lot of ways for Tybura to win this fight as an underdog. And if you want to look at his 15 UFC fights, I mean, he's a very kind of like gatekeeper-ish, contender in the division now. After he had that 5-win streak against a lot of lower-level guys, right? Sergey Spivak, Maxim Grishin for some reason was that heavyweight. Ben Rothwell is old. Greg Hardy and Walt Harris both had success early, but then, they gas out and get finished in the later part of the fight, right? Late round 1 for Harris and round 2 for Greg Hardy. So, again, employing the takedown and ground and pound TKO stoppages there. But he's losing to guys like Verdum. Derek Lewis can knock him out. Shamil Abdurakhimov and Augusto Sakai, both bigger, more menacing strikers. They both knock him out. So you can kind of see where Romanov is going to be at in this division based on this fight, which is why it's very exciting. But I just think Romanov gets it done. Doesn't really deserve to be a minus 350 favorite, although with that 16-0 record next to him, it's hard to dispute. But I think he's the more athletic guy, the stronger guy. He is a southpaw that'll be kind of tricky on the feet as well. And I just think with the 70% takedown accuracy he's had so far, the 4-1 significant strike differential, I think he's the rightful favorite, and I do favor Romanov to get this done. I think he gets him done inside the distance. Probably somewhere in round 2, he'll have worn down Tybura, and he'll get either a ground and pound stoppage, or he'll get some sort of shoulder lock or some sort of choke and win the fight. So give me Romanov to win here. I'm pretty confident he gets it done. I'm beyond excited for this next fight at bantamweight between Merab Dvalishvili and Jose Aldo. Jose Aldo, one of my favorites of all time. Always geek to see him fight, but this fight is one of the most confusing fights to call on the card, in my opinion. It's also the most exciting, anticipated fight for me, and it was the most fun to do tape study for. So all around a good time. Minus 120 slight favorite for Merab Dvalishvili. Plus 100 underdog price for Jose Aldo, the former featherweight champion. One of the best to ever do it, man, in the WEC and UFC. Now at bantamweight in his older age, he's looking very good as well. So one of my all-time favorites here. Had to put my bias aside in this fight. But anytime you see plus money on Jose Aldo, the former champion, man, I'm looking at that number. 31-7 record, 17 knockouts for the King of Rio, Jose Aldo, 13-2 in decisions. He was only subbed one time, and that was 25 years ago, right? Been knocked out 4 times. Most recently, it was Peter Yan, Max Holloway twice, and of course Conor McGregor was the first one to ever do it. So at bantamweight, he's looked pretty good now. He's got still that nice high-level Muay Thai striking style, that classic, light on the front leg, heavy weight on the rear leg. That aids in his takedown defense staying as good as it has been. Still over 90% takedown defense for Jose Aldo in all 27 of his fights in the UFC and WEC combined. A crazy statistic over that long of a career to have that high of takedown defense. Merab Dvalishvili, on the other hand, though, 60 recorded takedowns over 9 fights in the UFC. That's crazy as well. So you got kind of an unstoppable force, immovable object type of thing going on here. And Merab has pretty good, striking as well. He's got pretty good feints, light on his feet, and a very active output on his striking. And he mixes in such a fluid style between mixing in the striking and the boxing and the takedown offense. Oftentimes, as he's taking you down, he's still throwing a strike with whatever hand is free at the time. So very good single legs. He'll transition that into body locks. Very effective double leg when he gets you against the cage as well. And, Jose Aldo, I think he's like a cat, man. He stays on his feet pretty well. And, Merab's going to have a hell of a time taking him down. But what's that going to do to the striking output of Jose Aldo when he's spending, a good minute, 2 minute, 3 minute defending against takedowns against the cage, trying to avoid getting taken down, when he's already kind of a low-volume striker, let's be honest, aside from that. So that really does worry me. At bantamweight, he's looked good in his old age. He looks very fresh, 3-2 at bantamweight. A 3-fight win streak now at bantamweight as well. Merab Dvalishvili coming off of that awesome performance, that comeback win after struggling in round 1 against Marlon Moraes last September. Marlon was able to slip the right cross of Merab Dvalishvili, hit him with a clean counter left hook, put him in all sorts of trouble, almost end the fight, but he gasses himself out as Marlon Moraes does, and Merab showed great resolve, great durability, worked himself back into that fight in round 1, and then took over in round 2, landing 100 unanswered strikes before finally getting that TKO stoppage, and that was his only stoppage victory in the UFC. The rest have all been decision results. So, again, this is going to be a case where I think Merab Dvalishvili, of course, has the wrestling advantage. I'm going to give him the cardio advantage for sure, even though he has not been in the long 5-round wars that Jose Aldo's been in. He's so much more high output, high action, and keeps a very good cardio pace. Whatever fatigue he does feel, Merab definitely works through it. He's got the youth advantage and, of course, the minute-winning ability. Jose Aldo, the experience, of course, better opposition, strength of schedule, that 5-round experience I touched on. He's going to have, probably better durability. He's only, like I mentioned, he's only been knocked out a few times by the best of the best. And over a long career, that's very impressive. So I'll give him the durability, and I'll give him, of course, the finishing potential as well. He's got way more knockouts. I mentioned Merab's only got 1 UFC knockout, usually more of a decision machine. Jose Aldo is able to end the fight in a hurry, change the pace of a round with 1 single strike, and he's got very good counter-punching ability. Very similar to what Merab just faced in his last fight last year, that, slipped the counter to, countered back with that left hook. That's Jose Aldo's moneymakers, that lead left hook. So he's got very good pull counters and just a lifetime of having, very strong leg kicks. He can go high with the kicks, but usually it's the boxing that sets up the, the boxing and the knees up close in the clinch really set up the fight-ending ability for Aldo. So if this fight does finish inside the distance, I would have to imagine it was Jose ending him with strikes. If this goes to decision, any man's game. I am going to side with the side of Merab Dvalishvili, though, and I think, the plus money side is something you want to take in this fight. If you're going to play this fight at all, it's very close and dicey. Get something with a plus money tag. I'm going to take Merab to win by decision, which will have a plus number attached to it, I'm sure. Probably around like plus 150 to plus 175. Probably closer to the plus 150, let's be honest, when the props drop. But, if I can get a higher number, I'll gladly take it. But I'm going to take Merab to win by decision here. I think it's a case of, the minute winning ability of Merab versus the moment winning and fight ending potential of Jose Aldo. I just think Jose Aldo is going to be way more low volume, as he always is, time and time again. We've got a lot of data on this. But, again, what worries me is he's going to spend so much time, already low volume, defending against getting taken down. Meanwhile, Merab is going to be loading up on strikes, get the body lock against the cage, hold Jose against the cage in the clinch, land knees to the body, knees to the legs, things like that. So I just think that the significant strikes will end up loading up high for Merab. And if he gets control time, then so be it as well. But I think all of the statistics will be in the favor of Merab in this fight, and I expect he wins a decision here. Again, I don't hate anybody taking the veteran savvy, the proven ability, high-level competition, and plus money, most importantly, on Jose Aldo. But I'm going to go the other way and probably take that decision prop on Merab. I just think he, has all of the potential and momentum in the world to get this job done over Jose Aldo, and I don't see him finishing Jose. So give me Merab by decision here. Surprisingly, this next fight is the co-main event at 185, Paulo Costa versus Luke Rockhold. I say surprisingly 185 because last year, Paulo Costa pulled a weight class stunt over Marvin Vettori, and Dana White claimed he would never fight at 185 again. Paulo Costa definitely disagreed, and, Dana White said, try it. And, well, I guess he's trying it because Dana White is not a man of his word. And Paulo Costa's back at 185. So 31 years old, 6'1", 72-inch reach for Costa. The minus 300 favorite for the jacked Brazilian. I don't have many favorite fighters these days, but Paulo Costa is certainly one of my favorites. This guy's so funny, and he's a vicious striker as well. Luke Rockhold, the plus 250 underdog, 37 years old at this point, 6'3", 77-inch reach. For the black belt in BJJ, submission grappler, southpaw striker, and he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Hasn't been in the cage in over 3 years. So, all 5 of his losses, he is 16-5 as Luke Rockhold, all 5 losses by knockout. Looks like his chin was failing him back in the day before he took this long layoff. And now injuries have piled up as well. He was supposed to fight Sean Strickland last year, and that was delayed due to a herniated disc, lower back. L4, L5. So that's nothing to play with. That's not good. So a crippled back, a failing glass chin, not very good for the former Strikeforce and brief UFC middleweight champion here. So I would expect very early on in this fight, Luke Rockhold will try to crash the pocket and get this fight up against the fence where he looks for a takedown against Paulo Costa. But Luke Rockhold, not very good takedown accuracy. Paulo Costa, very good takedown defense, only taken down 4 times. 2 of those 4 times were by Yoel Romero, very briefly, no control time, and Marvin Vettori, who was able to get a little bit of control time. So, Paulo Costa, 13-2, 11 knockouts, 1-1 in decisions, both of those in the UFC, 4 knockouts. He's coming off of last year he had that 5-round war against Marvin Vettori. Up a weight class, 205-pound bout because Paulo Costa didn't even attempt to make weight, which was kind of cool, actually. I like his style there. And his stock actually sort of rose in my eyes against Marvin Vettori. He showed once again he's got legendary durability. He can fight through fatigue. He looked like he was about to die in round 1 due to a heart attack. He comes back and does 4 more very high output rounds. So I like to see that. The last time we saw his durability definitely tested was against Yoel Romero, where he was able to beat him by decision as well. In a all-out 3-round war, he did have that one slip-up where he got knocked out against Israel Adesanya. He was drinking a lot of wine the night before. What are you going to do? He is the former Jungle Fight 185-pound champion before making his entrance in the UFC. A lot of finishes on this guy's record, man, and he's a very willing to engage in a war type of fighter. He's able to have clean, crisp kickboxing at range, but Paulo Costa also likes to engage in close range wars in the pocket, against the fence as well. So if Luke Rockhold wants to take the fight to the fence, which I think he's going to want to, I think he's going to have to really watch himself on the break. So if he has the Muay Thai plum, the double collar tie, which he often does employ, against Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa is very good at circling off the cage and, using good knees, elbows, and vicious hooks up against the cage. So he loves to corner opponents against the fence. And if Luke Rockhold finds himself there, I think he's going to get knocked out, and I think he gets knocked out early. So, there's just not a lot of good things from Luke Rockhold recently, and not a lot of data to go off of in the past 3 years. He hasn't been absent. So I don't like all of the injuries. I don't like the knockout streak he's been on. I think Paulo Costa gets the job here. It's a little sketchy to bet on Paulo Costa, pre-flop before the fight happens, because you don't know if the guy's going to show up, if he's going to just pull some weight class stunt again. In this case, I don't think they'll let him fight if he doesn't make weight. So I like everything about Paulo Costa in this. He's got a very good, right body kick, and then he'll land that foot and throw a left lead hook, which usually will find its mark. And I think Luke Rockhold will get knocked out in round 1 or 2. So again, probably round 1. You could bet Costa by knockout at like minus 150. Kind of a steep price tag, but I don't think this gets drug out to a decision. I think this fight doesn't go to decision as a parlay piece as well. So give me Costa, round 1 knockout. Okay, we've made it to the main event of the evening. Welterweight championship on the line, defended by Kamaru Usman, once again taking on Leon Edwards. This is a rematch. Back when Leon Edwards was making his first fight, and I believe Kamaru his second fight in the octagon, these two fought each other, and Usman took him down 6 times, outstruck him, and won a clear-cut unanimous 3-round decision. So will this be much different? We will see. Kamaru Usman is now 35 years old, 6 foot tall, 76-inch reach, giving up 2 inches of height and gaining 2 inches in reach over Leon Edwards, who's 6'2", surprisingly big for welterweight, 30 years young here. He's 19-3. Very good, win streak for Leon Edwards. He did have that weird no contest that got in the way of his win streak over Bilal Muhammad, but it was a fight he was winning clearly up until that point. So the southpaw striker in Edwards, very good Muay Thai style. Very nice left high kicks, good teep kicks to maintain distance from Leon Edwards. Very little windup in these strikes as well. Maintains distance, and I think he is technically the better striker technically at range. Leon Edwards is the plus 290 underdog. Big price tag, minus 350, and climbing on Kamaru Usman, the champion, who's got a nice, shiny 20-1 record himself. So 9 knockouts, 10 decisions for Kamaru Usman here. And he switches stances occasionally, and he's got a pretty improved striking defense and striking accuracy now after working with Trevor Whitman for the Gilbert Burns camp when he left Sanford MMA. Now he's back at Sanford or Killcliff FC. That's always been his home base, was that gym. So he's back there. His striking looks better. I don't know if I can get there on Leon Edwards as far as an underdog. I wish I had a more controversial pick for this fight. But once again, I see Kamaru taking this one by decision. He's got amazing proficiency in the clinch. He's got very good power, very good experience over better competition. Clear collegiate wrestling advantage here. He's been to the 5th round 6 times. Leon's been there as well, but only 3 times into lesser competition. Again, I'm giving the youth to Leon Edwards. I'm giving, the better striking at distance to Leon Edwards, but how would he win this fight? He'd have to use that sharp, precise striking over 5 rounds, win at least 3 of those 5 rounds, and Kamaru would have to suddenly be lower output, not land a big, damaging, respect-earning strike, and he'd have to, be really unsuccessful in taking this fight to the ground, or at least getting the clinch control and getting the takedowns. He's got about a 50% takedown accuracy, does Kamaru Usman. Leon Edwards, a very nice 70% takedown defense, but again, not as high of competition as Kamaru Usman, who's got a near, I think on paper, it's 100% takedown defense. Not that that's going to be tested against Leon Edwards, but it just goes to show how high-level Usman is against very high-level guys like Colby Covington a couple of times. We're talking about him starting to knock people out like Masvidal, who's never been finished. Gilbert Burns, who was had him in all sorts of trouble early, and the resolve and durability of Usman showing through in those fights. So Leon Edwards, also very durable, never been finished. But again, this is against much lesser competition and a very inactive schedule for Leon Edwards as well, who's been looking to pack together a win streak to get this title shot. He's been very protective of who he fights on his way to the belt here. So without the big threat of a finishing ability from Leon Edwards, without a big threat of him negating the takedowns, I just think Kamaru would have to have an uncharacteristically bad performance, and Leon Edwards would have to have a really perfect fight to win this one. So at plus 290, I don't see myself getting there. if you wanted to like take a stab at like Leon Edwards by decision, which would be his most likely path, I think that's around like plus 600 or so, but I'd probably want even more money on that, to be honest. So the thing that I would like that would be neutral between these two guys would be the over 4.5 or the fight goes to decision, I think is how this fight plays out. Again, Leon Edwards never been finished, and even though Kamaru started to finish people lately, still not a potent finisher overall. I would say this goes to decision more times than not. If you could get like minus 200 or less for the over 4.5 or fight goes, I like that a lot. I might bet that myself, but Kamaru Usman, I just think wins by decision once again. You know, uses the clinch control, gets some takedowns here, and lands the more eye-catching, moment-winning shots on the feet. So give me Usman to win here. Again, I was looking for every way to bet Leon Edwards as an underdog. I could not find it. So give me Usman by decision. Okay, guys, there you have it. All 13 fights broken down for UFC 278, Usman versus Edwards Part 2. Not a whole lot of underdogs this week as far as the predictions go. I'm only picking 1 out of 13, which is usually pretty insane. There's always going to be more than that. The likely ones I can see outside of Santos, Daniel da Silva could come through in round 1. Very dangerous guy. Jose Aldo, always live. One of the best to ever do it. Marcin Tybura, very tough heavyweight. He's live for an upset as well. So those 3 there I can see coming through, but I see paths to victory more so for their opponents. So we'll see what happens. Check out my best bets and props later on this week for my full betting slate and other props you should choose. On Wednesday I'll have my live stream. This time it'll be at 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time. The Pickin' Winners YouTube channel will be my guest. I might have one or both of those guys. I'll have Pickin' Fights Tom for sure. So check out the Pickin' Winners YouTube channel. They do a great podcast. Their picks are already out. They get those out on Sunday. So subscribe to them. Tell them Addicted to Combat sent you. And I will talk to you guys very soon. Check out the live stream on Wednesday. Cheers.